And joining me now is Ambassador Danny Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. and former Israeli deputy foreign minister. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Pleasure.
I want to discuss with you some of the comments that came from Secretary of State Blinken during his visit, warning of Israel's isolation if it pursues an operation in Rafah. Are you concerned about those comments?
Yes, I am. But we should listen very carefully. What Secretary Blinken articulated very well was the American policy. First and foremost, they really care and about the state of Israel and the security of the state of Israel. They are a great supporter and friend. They also share our goal of defeating Hamas and basically dismantling it. The only caveat here is just a tactical way how to move forward vis-a-vis Rafah. And here, I think there is much more room to maneuver. It's not just 0 or 1. So I think there should be a more prudent discussion between Israel and the United States and coordinate how we move further. I don't think that it is wise to defy the U.S. altogether. I don't think it is appropriate from the U.S. to tell Israel exactly what to do. But between these two positions, there is a lot of room to really find out a common way to move forward.
I want to get your take on Netanyahu's comments. Do you think that he'll really pursue an operation in Rafah without U.S. support? And if he did, what could be those consequences to Israel's ties with the U.S.?
Well, I believe that right now, let's say the comments from the Prime Minister have two purposes. One is to really show the world what is our goal and not to surprise anyone, to show determination, so to bring the American and the international community closer to the Israeli demands, to see that we are not, let's say, backing down. The second thing, I believe, is to put more pressure on the Hamas as the negotiations about the hostages deal is coming to an end, hopefully soon. So whether we will go alone or not, it's still an open question. Of course, it is much better for us to go with the support of the international community and mainly of the United States. We have to remember that when the United States supports Israel, the international community just follows suit. When there is a daylight between Israel and the United States, then all kinds of players in the international community come in and trying to widen this gap. We saw what the Canadian government did with declaring arms embargo on Israel, Dutch and others. So it would be much wiser for Israel. And also, I think for the United States' interest would be better to work together.
Alternatively, the U.S. Congress has voted not to resume funding for UNRWA until 2025. I want to get your reaction on that.
Well, I think that's a very, from a moral point of view, this is the right decision. Also from a practical and for a strategic point of view, UNRWA has proven itself to be an arm of Hamas, nothing less than that. So we should never allow them to come back. Suffice to say that the Hamas is demanding that UNRWA would be back in Gaza. This is very much telling, and this is why we should really double down on taking UNRWA out of Gaza, perhaps out of the entire Middle East, because they were not only not effective as a UN agency, they were quite destructive and part of the terror, I would say, the terror infrastructure.
And meanwhile, a confrontation on Israel's northern front with Lebanon is looming. Do you believe that the U.S. will support Israel if war breaks out with Hezbollah?
Yes, here the situation is different because, with Hamas, it's quite obvious that it will be defeated, just a matter of tactical decisions. But with Hezbollah, it's a very strategic issue about what will happen in our northern border, our communities, our border town communities in the north right now are all evacuated. This is not sustainable. And the 80,000 and more Israelis who will not come back to their homes unless and until Hezbollah is no longer a threat. Hezbollah will not be a threat if it moves up north at least 10 or 15 kilometers away, which is outside the range of direct missile attacks. This should, of course, the preference, both here in Israel and I believe the government of Lebanon and the United States, would be to do it through a diplomatic negotiations. But if this is not the case, then Israel will have no choice. This is a real, what we call a casus belli. This is a real reason for war. And here, the United States will do everything to lean on the Lebanese government to push Hezbollah and also maybe on other actors in the region. But if negotiations fail with Hezbollah, it's quite clear that we'll have to go on a ground operation and a military all-out war.
Meanwhile, internally, Netanyahu is facing immense pressure between the hostage families who obviously want a deal to bring home their loved ones who have been held in captivity for nearly 6 months now, and his coalition, which is pushing the prime minister to carry on with the war, to dismantle Hamas, which has been the IDF's one of the top 2 missions since this war was launched.
Yes, and actually the argument of the families of the hostages and also some in the cabinet is that there is not necessarily a zero-sum game between the two goals of defeating Hamas altogether and reaching a deal to release the hostages. It's just a matter of priorities and the timetable. The hostages which are languishing over there every day is making their life more at risk. So they demand to get them out with a deal as soon as possible, even if Israel will have to do some, let's say, more compromises to the Hamas. However, with the Hamas, they're not going anywhere. Rafah is not going anywhere. And once, we are enclosing Rafah, so nobody can get in or out, then there is no hurry necessarily in moving into Rafah. So what they say is first, get the hostages back, and then deal with Hamas, and you can finish the job.
Ambassador Danny Ayalon, thank you very much for your insight this morning.